Hey everyone, I'm Teela with Deep English. Thank you for joining me for another lesson today. We'll be learning 5 useful idioms and a bit about their origins. An idiom is an expression or a phrase whose meaning isn't often obvious. So even if you understand every single word within the idiom, you may not understand the idiom itself. That's why it's so important that you're here now learning these idioms. Today we'll also be learning their origins because I think anytime that we can bring story into what we're learning, it's easier for us to remember what we've learned and then to also understand what we're learning while we're learning it. So let's get this party started. That's an idiom. That means let's get started. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our channel below so that you can get the newest lessons as soon as they're released. Okay? Now, let's get this party started. Our first idiom is to steal someone's thunder. To steal someone's thunder. If we were to translate this literally, we might think that it meant to take thunder away from someone. That doesn't even make any sense. So we know that this must mean something different. So let's take a look at this idiom's history. So this idiom probably came from the 1700s when a playwright named John Dennis created a machine that produced a sound that was much like thunder. Unfortunately, his play was a flop. It was a failure. So no one came and no one really got to hear the sound of the thunder made by this device. So a little while later, John heard that another play was using his thunder making device. When he heard it, he said, "That's my thunder, by God." And this became a famous expression around London. So to steal someone's thunder. Can you guess what it might mean to steal someone's thunder? So to steal someone's thunder means to prevent someone from having praise or attention by doing the praiseworthy thing yourself. So for example, we might use this idiom in a sentence like, "She announced her engagement at my birthday party. It was like everyone forgot it was my party and spent all their time congratulating her. She totally stole my thunder." Or in a sentence like, "I planned to tell this really funny joke at the dinner party, but he stole my thunder by telling it first." So to steal someone's thunder. Have you ever stolen someone's thunder before? If so, feel free to share below. I'm sure a few of us have some very funny stories about stealing someone else's thunder. All right, so let's move on to our second idiom. Close but no cigar. Close but no cigar. If we were to translate this one literally, we might think that it meant to be close to something that isn't a cigar. Again, this one makes no sense. So we have to look deeper to find the origins of this and to find out what it would mean if we used it in conversation. So this idiom, close but no cigar, probably came from the 19th century when carnival games were meant for adults. And so when you were playing a carnival game, if you won, you might win a cigar. If you came close to winning, but you didn't win, it might be said that you were close, but no cigar. Can you guess what this one means today? What it means to say to someone, "Ooh, close, but no cigar." This one's kind of an easy one. See if you can guess what it means. If you guessed that close, but no cigar means to be close to winning, but not actually winning, then you're right. We could use this idiom in a sentence like, "She told me to guess her birthday, and I guessed July 3rd. She said, 'Ooh, close but no cigar. It's July 7th.'" Or in a sentence like, I knew that her name started with an A, so I said, "Hello, Anna." She laughed and said, "Close but no cigar. I'm Ashley." So close but no cigar, to be close to getting it right, but not quite. All right, let's move on to our third idiom. This one is under the weather. Under the weather. If we translated this literally, we might think to be under the weather meant to be outside when it's raining, or to almost take a cloud and cover up with it. Again, of course, that's not what this means. It doesn't even make any sense. So let's take a look at the history of this one. This one probably came from a time when sailors would say that during a storm, to be under the weather bow was to be on the side of the ship that was getting the most wind. During a storm, sailors would also go under the deck, and they would bunker down and wait for the bad weather to be over. They would essentially be under the weather, waiting for the storm to pass. Can you guess what this one means when used in conversation today? To be under the weather. I'll give you a moment. Okay, so if you guessed that to be under the weather means to be unwell or even ill, then you're right. This one is a little bit tricky, but that's what it means. To be under the weather means to be unwell. I like this one because when we think about the origins of being under the weather, which meant a big storm coming and you go under the deck of the boat, we can kind of think of when we're feeling ill, if we are feeling under the weather, we can maybe go to bed and rest and wait for the storm to pass. So to be under the weather. We might use this one in a sentence like, "She seemed under the weather, so I told her to go home from work early and to drink some tea and rest." Or, "I was feeling a bit under the weather. I had a sore throat or a runny nose, and so I said, I'm not going to the party." So to be under the weather. When I'm under the weather, I like to make a tea of echinacea. It's a really healing herb and it's good for your health. So what do you like to do when you're under the weather? How do you take care of yourself when you're under the weather? Feel free to share with us below. All right, so let's move on to our fourth idiom. Barking up the wrong tree. Barking up the wrong tree. If we were to translate this one literally, we might think that it means to bark like a dog up a tree, but not up the right tree, up the wrong tree. So again, this is a little bit ridiculous, and of course that's not what this one means. Let's take a look at the history of this idiom. So barking up the wrong tree probably came from a time when many people used hunting dogs, and a hunting dog would chase its prey, like a squirrel or a fox, up a tree. Oftentimes, the dog would think that the squirrel or the fox ran up one tree, and it would bark at the tree and bark up the tree, but the squirrel was actually in the other tree. So the dog was barking up the wrong tree. My little Chihuahua does this all the time. She loves to chase chipmunks, and she'll often chase a chipmunk to a tree and start to bark up the tree, but the chipmunk is actually at a different tree, so she's barking up the wrong tree. So let's learn what it means to bark up the wrong tree. Barking up the wrong tree means to look for something in the wrong place. So we might use this one in a sentence like, "I thought he was flirting with me at dinner, so I asked him on a date. He said, 'You're barking up the wrong tree,' and showed me his wedding ring." Barking up the wrong tree. Or, "I was looking for information on my ancestors in books about Germany. I was barking up the wrong tree when I found out that I'm actually Norwegian." So I was barking up the wrong tree by looking in a book about Germany. Okay, so barking up the wrong tree. Have you ever barked up the wrong tree before? I think most of us have. Feel free to share below if you've got a funny story about barking up the wrong tree. All right, so let's move on to our fifth and final idiom. This one is to be caught red-handed. To be caught red-handed. If we would look at this one literally, we might think that it meant to catch someone whose hands are red. Of course, that's not what it means. So let's take a look at the history of this one. This one probably came from an old English law that said that it was illegal to butcher someone else's farm animal. But a person could not be accused of this unless they were caught with the animal's blood on their hands. This one is gross, and I'm a vegetarian, so it's even more gross to me. But so that's what it originally meant, was to be caught with this animal's blood that wasn't your animal on your hands. Can you guess what this one might mean when used in conversation today? To be caught red-handed. Okay, so this one means to be caught in the act of doing something wrong. So for example, we might use this one in a sentence like, I knew I was supposed to save the cake for dessert, but I was really hungry, so I took a bite. At that exact moment, my friend walked in and saw me. She said, "Ooh, I caught you red-handed." Or we might use it in a sentence like, he said he wasn't cheating, but when the wife walked in on him while he was making out with someone else, she said, "I caught you red-handed." So to be caught red-handed, to be caught in the act of doing something wrong. Have you ever caught someone red-handed before? If you've got an interesting story or comment about catching someone red-handed, let us know below. All right, and that does it for today's lesson on 5 useful idioms and their origins. I had a ton of fun. I hope you did too. If you like this lesson, feel free to give us a like, to comment below, to subscribe. If you want more free lessons, click below for a free English lesson. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.